Hey everybody, welcome to another Tuesday and another episode of Cloud Talk Live. So glad that you're here. All right, well, it turns out you can't hear the music, so I'm going to turn that off. All right, everybody, how are you doing here today? Jeff DeVerter, Chief Technology Evangelist here at Rackspace Technology, and so glad that you are joining us here this morning. I am once again traveling for the company, and you guys are clearly understanding the rules of engagement here. You are introducing yourselves, which is fantastic, everyone. So on the road again over here in lovely Las Vegas, and it's quite early here in Pacific time, but I am delighted to be here with you. So what I'd love for you to do is rules of engagement, folks. Introduce yourselves. Would love to know who you are. Would love to know, well, where in the world you are. So introduce yourselves in the comments, whichever platform you happen to be on. This is going to be such a fun episode. We've got Robyn here, and you're gonna really enjoy that. So introduce yourself, tell us who you are, tell us where you are, and feel free, if you want to give us some other feedback, to send us an email over at solve@rackspace.com. That comes to the whole production team. Producer Daniel's there. You'll get it, I'll get it, and of course Megan as well. Sean, welcome to the program. You ready to learn about some grilling? I hope you are, because that is the show today. Well, the audio for these, as you know, show up in our podcast feed. So if you aren't subscribed to the Cloud Talk podcast, I would encourage you to do so. Just head over to anywhere where you find podcasts. You can see them all listed down here at the bottom of the screen. And not only that, but we've started recording and releasing new full-length episodes of audio only. So the only way for you to get those is to be subscribed. So go ahead and do that. All right, well, let's see who all is introducing themselves here. We've got, somebody's here from Kashmir. We've never had someone from Kashmir, so welcome. Of course, Florida, I expect to be in good attendance today with Robyn. And so welcome, everyone. So glad that you are all here. Now, as you know, this event, this live stream, tends to be always focused on technology. And regardless of the topic, that is how we like to make it lean. Now, here in the United States, we're heading towards Memorial Day. And for those of us, not those of us, I don't live in the South, but for those, or in the North, but those who live in the northern parts of the United States, they tend to wait a while to pull those grills out. Well, this is the first big holiday of the warm season. And so what we thought we'd do here for this episode of Cloud Talk Live is to have an episode completely focused on the technology behind our favorite topic, at least Robyn's in mind, is grilling. Now, I get to introduce you to Robyn Lindars. Robyn is, I've known her, Robyn, we're going to figure it out when you get on here. I think maybe about a decade, at least, I think. But Robyn is the grill girl. If you go over to grillgirl.com, you get to read all about her. She's got all kinds of her own stuff. Look at her right there. Even her own magazine. So with that, let's get Robyn up onto stage and get this conversation started.
Hi, Jeff.
Robyn, welcome to Cloud Talk Live.
Welcome from Florida. It's great to talk to everyone. And you know I have a background in tech too, so I love working out with all of you guys. So my two favorite subjects are grilling, and I can talk a little tech too, but now grilling and tech come together, which is very exciting.
It is exciting, and your husband is deep in the whole tech world as well, now working for an AI company. Who isn't working for an AI company these days?
Right? And who isn't writing content without ChatGPT? But I digress.
I wonder who made your description for your event. I wonder if it was a combination of all those things. Well, thank you for taking time out to come and chat with us here on Cloud Talk Live. So glad that you're here.
Well, thank you for having me. I think it's a fun topic as we're heading into Memorial Day. Like, I think in Florida, it's always grilling season for me, but for everyone else, it's not. So it's good to remind everyone, like, all the fun stuff that they can be doing on their grills and introduce you guys to all the neat stuff that's going on in the world of grilling, because it's not just gas, charcoal, pellet, flat top. There's all this new stuff coming out that's fun to learn about and play with, if you will.
That's right. Well, before we get into the tech too deep, a couple of things I wanted to touch on, and this goes back to, I think, really where you and I got to know each other, is you don't have to have the biggest and fanciest grill ever. Really, you just need some flame, however you're going to create that. And remember, we did that. In fact, you let me write an article for the blog, because we at work, we were doing, what was it? We called it Fire Fridays. Once a month, we were actually grilling at work. And so we started this whole series of bringing even little grills and having some fun. So it doesn't take the fanciest of equipment, just some fire and whatever it is you want to cook.
That's so true. That is how we met, Jeff. I was trying to figure it out. I was doing this like grill at work series, and I think that's how we met up, because I was like, that's when I lived in Miami at the time, and I was taking my little Weber Smoky Joe and like grilling random stuff outside the office, which was fun. You know, you see pictures of me, I'm out in a dress grilling, which was just like, why not, right? And
why not?
It's a fun workplace thing to do with, you know, why go out when you guys can grill together? So.
Right, it makes it a whole event, not just having a meal, but preparing the meal together, and you get to do it right there at work. So super fun.
Absolutely.
Well, and that's really the encouragement, because as we get into some of these grills that are relatively expensive in some cases, you know, it can seem daunting and as if you have to have all the right tools. But the best tool you just need is, well, it's just fire. But let's get into it. There is a lot going on now. Now, what really took the grilling world by storm just even a few years ago are these pellet grills. Tell the world, if they don't know what a pellet grill is, what is a pellet grill?
So let me give you guys just a little bit of history. I mean, if you have walked into, for those of you in the US, like a Home Depot, you're seeing a pellet grill probably. Traeger's the one that a lot of people know because they're probably the biggest. But the history of Traeger, of the pellet grill, is that a guy named Joe Traeger back in like 1985 created it. He actually used to work in the like fireplace industry and figured out a way to basically take compressed wood pellets and turn them into essentially a grill. So the way I like to think of a pellet grill is it's like an outdoor appliance. It functions very much like an oven, if you will, which I think is why a lot of women are seeing that as what I like to call your gateway grill. Which my gateway grill was a gas grill, right? So my entree into grilling. But so how it works is that it uses these compressed wood pellets that are fed into what's called a hopper via an auger. So it's got like a motor attached to it that it dumps these pellets into a firebox that then produces fire and smoke. So you're essentially cooking over like an outdoor oven that perfumes your meat with smoke infused air, essentially. So they are a lot of fun. They've gotten a lot of people into grilling or smoking, I should say, and they really do take the guesswork out of smoking because, you know, previously you had the fire management aspect, and now you essentially push a button and that's it.
Yeah, smoking used to be a full contact sport of keeping the firebox going, not too hot, not too cold, the right amount of smoke, the right wood, and playing with it. And it was a fiddle fest, as I used to refer to them. But now when you think about the Traeger, I mean, in fact, a lot of times your heat is created just through a propane fire to manage the temperature, but then the pellets are adding to the heat, but then also they're creating the smoke for you.
Yeah, and you know, it's cool to see the technology that's coming out. You know, for me, I think a lot of people ask me about pellet smokers, and I think they're fun until they break. I think what most people don't realize, and I have a part sitting outside my office right now that needs to go be replaced, is that they are great until they work. And then when something does go wrong, because there are a lot of moving parts, that's when it comes to needing to troubleshoot and figure out what's gone wrong. And so that's why when people always ask me, which grill companies do I recommend? I usually recommend companies that you don't find at a Home Depot, because you want to be able to call. You want to be able to call someone and get someone on the phone, because those big box stores aren't always the ones that you're going to be able to actually get someone on the phone, right? And if you're trying to figure out which part in this big grill needs replacing, is it the electronics? Is it the motor? What is it? You actually want someone to help you troubleshoot. So I usually recommend like a Green Mountain Grill or a Rectech, which you can get at a dealer, so that when you get to a dealer, you can even talk to your dealer about it, and they're going to have the know-how. Versus a big box type store. So I think that's the difference between like maybe spending more money, but having more longevity with a pellet smoker, versus less money, but having less longevity and taking it out to the curb.
Well, yeah, it's super smart. The more moving parts you have, the more things that can break. But we get into the tech aspect of it. In fact, let me bring up a picture now that you sent over, and it just to really show. There we go, Daniel. The amount of tech that exists in these grills. I mean, full color screen on a grill, Robyn. Who would have thought?
Coyote is doing some really cool things. So I've worked with all kinds of different pellet grill companies. Any of you guys, if you want to send me an email and ask me for my recommendations, robyn@grillgirl.com. So the Coyote is more of a, I'd say, builder grade model. That's about a $3,500 grill. But what I love about what they're doing is that, this is the first pellet grill I've seen that can actually sear a steak. So it gets up to 700 degrees. So that's the thing with pellet smokers, is that they're really good at smoking, but really, like, let's say you want to sear a steak, it's hard. And for me, I want to see those char marks. I actually am on
That's right.
with the way I like my steaks. And so Coyote's the first in the world of pellet smokers that I've seen be able to do this. In fact, they've actually even allow you to go into a sear mode, a sear function. So, and I'll just back it up. Like what I'll say, usually a lot of times what you also see with a higher price point grill is that they have a higher quality of stainless steel and components, which means they're not going to rust out like your average.
They're going to weather better. The pans aren't going to rust out as quick inside. All of
exactly. So it is kind of very much like you pay for what you get, right? And so the beauty of this grill too is that I think this user interface, I also have a background in technology too. So a UI on a grill is very exciting. This is the first one I've actually seen a touch screen that's in color. So I think it's just kind of cool. I am of course impressed by things like UI and design. And this is honestly, for me as a woman, I have historically always found pellet grills to be pretty ugly. Like, let's be honest, right? They usually have
the big black thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's got the little the smoke cap on the side, and they're just historically ugly in my opinion. Like I have a whole story about my girlfriend Raven, who's a designer, who she had been totally talked into getting a pellet smoker by my local dealer, and then as soon as she saw it, she's like, nope, can't put that in my backyard, And so what I think is nice about the Coyote is that it doesn't look like your traditional pellet smoker as well. It looks sexy. So for something that's going to take up space on your patio, it's a win-win. But it's
going to look good
cool to see that tech. You can sear. It's got a color UI, touchscreen, very different in the market.
Well, and with all of the innovation that's happening, and with all the different companies that are doing pellet grills, it's also heated up the thing. People are getting a little bit litigious about who owns the patents of these things and who can do what. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Traeger lawsuit. So as I mentioned, Traeger came up with the idea of the pellet smoker, but they did not come up with the idea of Wi-Fi and cloud capabilities in a pellet smoker. So the patent for actual pellet smokers ran out in 2005, and everyone started making their own version of pellet smokers. And actually it was in 2012 that the first pellet grill had Wi-Fi capabilities. And it was in 2016, I believe, that Traeger acquired let me back up and say everyone started at this point making Wi-Fi capabilities in their pellet smokers. So it was essentially open source software because it's the internet. I mean, it's Wi-Fi and it's
right. I mean, it's Wi-Fi. Everything's connected to Wi-Fi.
Right. So then in 2016, they acquired the patents to the concept of getting a pellet smoker onto Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi capability. So if you actually look at the lawsuit, and it's kind of confusing, and I'm not a lawyer, but they didn't actually patent the actual technology. They patented the concept. And so then what they did was they sent out a cease and desist to RecTech, Memphis Grills, and Green Mountain Grills. And keep in mind, people have been using this technology for a long time, like at least 4 years, right? And not just in grills, but in all kinds of temperature management, like your flame bosses of the world and things like that. And so then Green Mountain Grill filed they basically countered and said this is an invalid patent. And so the point of the matter is that Traeger has been kind of a bully in the industry. And instead of what's the example of a rising tide lifts all ships? Their rising tide is trying to sink the rest of the ships. And so as a general,
it's never a winning strategy.
No. And it is kind of a loophole in the patent world, is that you don't actually have to create the technology. You just have to have a lot of lawyers who can grab the patents up and then enforce it. And this has been a very interesting case because like I mentioned, it's a service patent. So it's the service, but not the actual technology.
Okay.
And so, but they have primarily tried to put a few of these smaller pellet smoker companies out of business, just drowning them in lawsuit and legal bills. And so as a general rule, when people say, should I get a Traeger? I say no, because there's plenty of other,
there are other options that aren't quite as bullish.
Yeah. And even going back to the point I said before, if you're going to get a pellet smoker, get a smaller one where when it does break, and it will, I can tell you, I would have $1 million right now if I had like $1 every time I've been outside in the hot Florida sun, taking apart my pellet grill, trying to figure out what's going wrong. But that's why you want to be able to call someone and get to the bottom of it quickly. Like, customer support is really a big deal. So like usually the ones I recommend are a Green Mountain Grill or a RecTech, for example, just because customer service is important in that type of grill.
Well, and we talk about customer service and all aspects of it, and you pay for what you get for, and especially in something like this with a lot of moving parts that you don't tend to have to take apart every weekend. So it's not the kind of thing that you're going to be intimately familiar with. If you are, maybe you're doing something wrong. But I'm actually happy about the Traeger grills because there was a gentleman in my neighborhood who decided he didn't want by his fancy pool anymore. He didn't want his big green egg. He wanted a Traeger. So he sold his egg for a song. And that's how I got into my first egg.
Wow.
I got a large egg for $300.
Wow. That's a
with
score.
The stand. Oh,
and
I know.
So if you guys don't know what Jeff is talking about, there is a grill, and it's basically a Kamado style grill. And so for those of you guys outside of the US, this may be really common for you, especially if you're in Asia, because the big green egg is based on like super old technology that was developed in China. It's basically a ceramic Kamado style grill, but they are amazing for grilling and smoking because the ceramic nature of a big green egg or a Kamado Joe, which I think we're going to talk about in a second. And there's, of course, a ton of people making these now, is that it really does give you a lot of moisture in your cook because the ceramic retains heat and moisture, and it also saves you on your charcoal because you can get a lot out of your charcoal because it does maintain your temperature. And that is why Big Green Egg specifically has a cult following. They're called eggheads because it is an addictive. They have a cult following because they're fun to cook on and they produce.
And I was a diehard Weber person before, and then I ended up with this, and I don't even know if I've lit the Weber since I got it. And
so that speaks volumes, right? I mean, everything on the egg is amazing. And, and the Kamado Joe is like a direct competitor, and it's essentially the same grill, right? In fact, when people do an apples to apples comparison, you'll see that you actually get more things when you buy a Kamado Joe versus, egg, mite, laundry, like kind of nickel and dime you on those things. But I think the part of the egg that people really enjoy is that you're kind of buying into a community because they have egg fests everywhere. So let the machine learn your grill pattern and customize. Let's just throw some machine learning onto my grilling patterns, right? It'll be like, Robyn, we've developed this for you. I love the chat. This is awesome. So,
yeah, because then we can take and say, well, I want my steak to be the Robyn profile. Go.
Right. I love it.
It's so funny. Well, let's go into the Kamado Joe a little bit more because, when we think about these older style grills that weren't necessarily didn't have the tech baked into it, a traditional egg, a Weber kettle, you can buy retrofitted stuff to make that happen. But of course, all these things now come with a lot of it in there already. So let's talk Kamado Joe.
Yeah, so Kamado Joe just came out with something called Connected. So essentially you have a Kamado grill, but now they've got the whole digital charcoal experience, right? So they've got the technology built in now where it's got an ignition system. So it lights your charcoal, which I think is really awesome. And I think a lot of companies in this space missed the boat on doing that because Weber had the Weber Performer that's been out for like, I don't know, 20 years.
I was going to say decades.
I met someone that worked in their like R&D department like this weekend because I was in a barbecue competition and I was like, you guys undermarket that grill. But I digress because it's great. So anyway, with the Connected, you've got the ignition, you've got basically a built-in Wi-Fi and digital controller. And you can even do things like, obviously, instead of having to hold that whole fire management aspect, now you can set the temp controls to say, put me at 400. It's got the fan attached. It's got all the stuff. And for those of you that really like to dork out and monitor your cooks, which a lot of people do, I know you guys, I see you. You can even track, right? You'll be like, oh, look, I had that temperature variation. That must have been when I hit the stall, or when the rain came in, or when I lifted the grill lid too many times, or whatever.
That's right.
But if you really want to have total precision and management, now you've got the merging of a Kamado grill and that technology. And so it's connected with a K, of course, but they just came out with that. And I think it's kind of cool to see the innovation in the market. Of course, some people might be like, I don't want any technology, just give me fire and charcoal. And I see you and I feel you, but people want it.
Yeah, because that's one, I live in this tech world, but it's one of those areas where at first I thought, because my dad was doing it and he got, the external thing, and he's managing temperatures via Bluetooth, and I'm thinking that would be fun. But then sometimes I just like to stand by the grill and cook.
And drink a beer. And
I didn't say that out loud, but yes.
And be one with, let the smoke waft through your hair. And it's about an experience, right? It's a sensory experience.
But there's also, when you're going out and you're going to do a brisket, and the brisket needs 12 hours, and you're going to start it at 4 in the morning so that you can have it ready by dinner time, you don't want to baby it at that point. That's when the technology, I think, really, in my life, helps.
I 100% agree with you. Like, whenever I use technology, it's when I'm doing an overnight brisket. And yep. I will say, what drives me crazy is half the tools I have don't work. Like, I will tell you, I have so much technology sitting in my garage. I couldn't get the Wi-Fi to work. I couldn't get the Bluetooth to work. It was like the distance, or maybe through my hurricane-proof windows, or all the things, which is why my foolproof method of, in case I still can't get the technology to work, is to make sure I'm just using a Wagyu brisket, because it's so fatty that it's forgiving. So in case I sleep,
right. So you're not going to dry it out.
Right. In case I sleep through the Texas crutch phase, which I have on the last 2 cooks overnight, it's still moist and I'm okay.
Awesome. Speaking of tech that will never let you down, let's take a look at this little number right here. So look at that. You even have your own instant read digital thermometer, Robyn.
Yep. And so that's kind of like my number one recommendation to anyone is, if you're not using a thermometer, get one. Why guess, right? I always say, why even go through the rubber chicken syndrome? Like, don't serve anyone over or undercooked food. But even, especially for something like a steak, I want a medium rare. If my mother-in-law is visiting, God forbid, she's going to want it well done, which kills me. But,
do you even do that? Will you even cook
I can't. I really just can't bring myself to do it, honestly. For a pork chop, yes. For a steak, no. Right. But if you have, so I just did a limited edition. I did a small batch of these.
And I've got one.
Thank you for your support. It's teal. And so it gives you like a 3-second reading, temperature read. It'll sit on your refrigerator. It's got a magnet. It turns off when you're not using it to save the battery life. And so it's just going to take the guesswork out for you. And these are like $29. It's easy. Like, save your cook, and especially with the price of all food, but meat, if you're going to buy yourself a nice steak, don't mess it up.
Don't mess it up. Yeah. And even if you're one of those,
unflock a steak, if you see what I'm saying. You can always undercook it, but you can never take it back off.
You can never take it back. You can't unring the bell. Even if you're going to be one of those that is, I don't want any tech near my grilling. I want to be out there and experience it and be one with the fire. Still get an instant read digital thermometer for all the reasons that Robyn just said.
You have to, because don't mess it up. Like, you're spending your time, like, make your time worthwhile. And that's like, now some people will say, oh, I can use they do the temperature by the feeling on their hands.
Oh yeah. The thumb. Yeah.
I don't trust myself to do that. And especially if I've had a couple of beers. So, I always struggle when to use the thermometer. Any best practice is always use the thermometer. If you're doing any meat, use it. Like, the only time I don't use a thermometer is something like shrimp, because once it turns pink, I know I'm done. Right. But like, this thermometer is your friend, and not just on the grill, like in the kitchen, especially chicken, 165. I think a lot of people will end up overcooking their chicken just to make sure it's
just
done.
To be safe.
And then you're going to dry it out.
And then they've got this dry shoe leather.
Does it work in Celsius? It does work in Celsius, so you should be good to go. You can flip it for whatever you need. And then
where do they find these? How does somebody get one of your?
Just go to grillgirl.com. I'm selling them on my website.
There we go. Head over to grillgirl.com. Now, let's unpack that name a little bit. Why Grill Girl? And what is this mission that you're on to help make it not just a bunch of guys who stand by the grill?
Right. It is a sausage fest. You know, I came from the world of software. That was a sausage fest. I got into grilling. That's a sausage fest too. But long story short, I have always loved to cook. I'm from the South in the US, and we love our food, right? And then one night, honestly, I went to go use my husband's grill, and I pretty much singed my eyebrows off, and I was like, I cannot believe that just happened. And then, as I mentioned, my gateway grill, I got a Weber Genesis for him, and I, out of practicality, started using it all the time. And then that was around the time that I started a blog. People don't realize I have a journalism degree, so I'd always been a writer in some form or fashion. And this was the early days of blogging, and the grillgirl.com evolved really into a recipe site. And in that time, I wrote a cookbook and launched a rub and started doing barbecue competitions with my dad and all these things. And so at the heart of it, though, I realized that, you know, women aren't grilling. Yep, there's my rub. And it's if you love like citrus flavors, then my rub is for you. And it is also a margarita rimmer too. And so it's actually complements everything: chicken, fish, even steak. It adds kind of an Asian profile. It's got a kaffir lime, granulated honey, coriander, and Himalayan salt base. So it's very different in the world of rubs. Because I'm different. I like to break the mold. So my other thing is I really am trying to empower more women to learn to grill. I rebooted my women's grilling clinic. I'm actually working on an e-learning module for women and doing some mentoring, like a mentorship program. Like, just because I just feel like, why not? Like, it's, especially, I have a marketing and sales background in the world of software, but think about it. 50% of the population it could be 40, who knows? I mean, in my world, I see women grilling, but I think your average family, the woman does not grill. She takes whatever she's prepared and has handed it to the husband. And what a missed opportunity for having fun and being outside with your family. And also, most people don't realize this. When you are grilling, it creates, if you do it the right way, you are creating less dishes.
100%.
And that's a major bonus to me. Less dishes is a good thing. I don't like doing dishes. That is like my other job is like a professional dishwasher, because I'm always developing recipes, right? So, so I am really trying to focus more on women with the women's grilling clinics and just making it approachable to everyone, because people don't even realize I'm not even 5'1", I'm 5'3", right? I am a total pipsqueak. If I can do it, anybody can do it.
Anyone can do it. Well, Robyn, thank you so much for being on the program today. I feel like we could talk for a while. In fact, one of the things we missed was to talk about your favorite recipes for this upcoming holiday. But if so, folks, just head over to grillgirl.com. There's a whole recipe section, so go check all of those out.
I do have a ton of burger recipes if you need some inspiration. The red, white, and blue burger, the Juicy Lucy burger, the hangover burger, all kinds of good stuff. So you don't have to be basic this weekend. You can try some new stuff.
Well, every Friday night is burger night at my house, cooked on the big green egg.
Nice.
Or on the Weber, depending wherever I am. So I'm going to go grab one of your recipes for this weekend.
Well, thanks, Jeff, and thank you guys. It was so great to meet you. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. Like I said, Robyn with a Y at grillgirl.com. I'm more than happy to help you. And I even have a recommended grilling tools page on my website. So if you're looking for like tips and tricks of just my favorite things that I recommend that are tried and true, there you go.
There you go. All right, Robyn, thanks so much for being here. And we look forward to maybe having you back as the season progresses, and we'll see what's on the grill.
I love it. Thanks so much, Jeff. It's good to see you.
Good to see you as well. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. It was great to have Robyn on the show. Now, as you know, every Tuesday morning, just like this one, we do the Cloud Talk Live. Where's the button I push? There it is. I want to thank you for being here. You can find the audio for these as well as everything else in the podcast, so make sure you go check that out. And you can find more information for us over at rackspace.com/solve. That is the thought leadership program here at Rackspace. We're not selling, we're giving away all the information that we have there. Now, next week, I've got Greg Ostrowski who's going to be on. He is from one of our favorite companies and sponsor of the program, App Dynamics, and we're going to get into all things observability. So I hope to see you next week. Everyone, until then, my name is Jeff DeVerter, Chief Technology Evangelist here at Rackspace Technology, for another episode